Boo Carter is the best Tennessee football player right now. Here's why.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols. Hope everybody had a happy Mother's Day yesterday and, celebrating those women in your life, your mothers, your wives, your grandmothers. I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day yesterday. And welcome back to the work week. This is Locked On Vols. Appreciate you guys for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Every dayers can do the show without you. Mailbag questions, we'll take those tomorrow, so go ahead and send those in at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Derek Kane, member of the VolQuest.com team covering Tennessee athletics, and of course, the host of Locked On Vols right here, wherever you get your podcast, completely free and available every single weekday. And today's show is going to be a fun one. Important games and bleak quarterback rooms. A couple of CBS Sports articles that I want to touch on in segment number 3 that I think will pique your interest. A couple of Vols that gained the most from the spring transfer portal cycle. There's a couple of them simply because of some departures in their position groups. That's coming up in segment number 2, but starting things off right now, Boo Carter is the best Tennessee football player, and here's why. I guess before I do get into the Boo Carter conversation, I do want to remind you guys that today's episode is brought to you in part by our friends over at Monarch Money, where you can take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, shout out to Monarch Money. All right, so I was talking with some colleagues, with some, not coworkers, but some guys that cover Tennessee baseball. This was Saturday night. Tennessee baseball won on Friday. Tennessee baseball came up short on Saturday, and I am recording this episode before the Saturday afternoon game because that's just kind of how my weekends go. So we'll talk Tennessee baseball, and I'll answer your questions in the mailbag show. Big rubber match coming up, obviously, by the time we're listening this, and this goes live. It will already have gone final. But a couple of us were talking about it during a game that took almost 4 hours, and we're just kind of sitting here saying, okay, Boo Carter. Boo Carter. He's obviously one of Tennessee's best players. But if you were just picking a team, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. Like, I'm not looking at this in terms of NFL draft projections or mock drafts or NFL draft profiles. I'm talking like if teams from the SEC right now, if I'm trying to pick my best 11 from Tennessee's team, who would be the number 1 overall pick? Does that make sense? And the name Boo Carter came up, and I started to think, well, he'd be up there for sure. He would really, really be up there. So right now, on May the 12th, Boo Carter's my number 1 pick, and here's why. Jermon McCoy would be my number 1 overall pick, but again, he's recovering from a torn ACL. So again, I'm talking about right now. I'm not even necessarily projecting to August and September and May. I'm just talking about right now, leaving spring practice. Jermon McCoy, the cornerback, would be my number 1 overall pick, okay? And, me and Boogie, we do this, Tennessee player draft exercise. We had one recorded in the can for whenever I was going to be out for a couple of days when my son was born. But, of course, Nico Iamaleava leaving screwed that whole thing up. So it never aired, and we're trying to make plans to do it again. But we do this exercise all the time, the Tennessee football player draft, and I think you guys enjoy it. But, like, right now, Jermon McCoy would be my number 1 overall pick. However, he's recovering from a torn ACL. So if you take Jermon McCoy out of the equation, Nico, of course, is not on the football team anymore. Dylan Sampson is not on the football team anymore. James Pierce is not on the football team anymore. Cooper Mays, Brew McCoy, no longer on the football team anymore. So, there's a lot of talent there. I'm not trying to say there's not, but in terms of proven star power, it's kind of bleak in that regard. So if Jermon McCoy's off the table, who you taking? Outside of Jermon McCoy, I thought of Ricky Gibson. Ricky Gibson certainly is not to the prestige level of Jermon McCoy, but he's been a starter for the past year, a really, really good one. Got his toes wet as a true freshman in 2023, played in some big-time moments and all that. Had the Citrus Bowl start and all that and more. Looked pretty good. I think Ricky Gibson's a pretty good player, so I think he's in this conversation. Joshua Josephs was also in this conversation as well. Sure, James Pierce was the story of the last 2 years, but Joshua Josephs played a ton. His Pro Football Focus grade, stock up, stock up, stock up. He led the team, I want to believe, in TFLs. I don't have the stats in front of me. But Joshua Josephs had a really, really fine, productive season, and now he is going to be Tennessee's lead pass rusher in 2025. He's got to find the way to get the quarterback down in the backfield more. I recognize that. But I think Joshua Joseph is certainly in this conversation. But lo and behold, right now on May the 12th, I'm picking Boo Carter, and here's why. Boo Carter, dynamic football player. He's one of those that I don't think will ever be an All-American. He's one of those that I don't think will ever be a first-round draft pick. I mean, he might be an All-American, but my point is he is a football player. The old saying, he's just got a nose for the football, right? That means wherever the football is, he's always around it defensively. It's a saying that goes for some really good defensive players that just have a good eye for being around the football, making tackles, disrupting plays, all that. That's Boo Carter. Boo Carter is a football player. I thought that as a true freshman playing a part-time role at the star position, which is really, really difficult, the nickelback spot, which is so common, and it's pretty much a regular position now with 5 defensive backs and a base defense in college football. And in high school, really, I cover high school football, and I mean, everybody plays with a nickelback now as well. But I thought he got a whole lot better. I thought his snap count obviously grew and grew and grew as the season went along. Had 1 interception, had a couple big down, 4th down stops. I thought his Pro Football Focus grade continued to climb. He just got better. And then this spring, they put more on his plate. Outside of him playing wide receiver, which we'll get to here in a moment as well. But they put more on his plate and are allowing him to kind of lead and be that quarterback of the defensive backfield. Now, Willie Martinez said that he's pretty much the quarterback back there. I said, is that for the whole defense? Because then, typically linebackers call the defense and everything, and then the middle layer of the defense, and they can talk with the run game or the front line. They can talk with the back, the defensive backs and all that. And Willie Martinez pretty much has meant the defensive backs, but being the quarterback out there, kind of leading that group, and they put all that on his plate, and he's continued to grow in that regard. And so I think that his play is even going to take another step this year on the defensive side of the football. Now, when you couple in what else he does, he's a skilled returner. He was an All-SEC freshman member for playing defensive back and returning punts and all that, averaging about 16 yards per punt return. Took forever for Tennessee to finally leave him back there and let him be the guy. I think Jamal McCoy's a really good punt returner, but why on earth are you risking Jamal McCoy out there returning punts? I'm not trying to say Boo Carter's expendable, because he's not, but when you looked at the corner depth at points and times last year, it was kind of silly to have Jamal McCoy back there. But Boo Carter finally, whenever they just said, okay, go, man, I mean, he was a really, really good returner. No fear. Going up there and securing a punt that's bouncing when you're about to take a hit. Going up there and making a catch when 5 guys are around you. He's fearless. So he's a really, really good returner. I think that he can return kicks as well. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be his forte. I don't know if that's going to be what he does every single game this year. But, of course, he can return kicks as well. But also his ability to play some offense. As we talked about in the buy or sell segment on Friday, do I think that he's going to be a huge impact wide receiver for Tennessee this year? Probably not. I don't think he's going to play 25, 30 snaps. I don't think he's going to lead Tennessee in receptions. Hopefully he's a package player. Hopefully he gets a couple of touchdowns and his role continues to grow as the year goes on. But he is going to have an impact on offense a little bit. I mean, I've seen him. I've seen him practice. I've seen him catch balls and routes on air. He's going to play some offense this year for Tennessee, but his main role is defense. It has been defense. It will be defense. But when you're sitting here kind of thinking of the pecking order, I thought of Jamal McCoy. Okay, he's kind of disqualified right now because he's recovered from a torn ACL. Ricky Gibson's in this conversation. Joshua Joseph's in this conversation. If we went off straight potential, talking like NFL draft prospects or mock drafts or just stuff like that, recruiting rankings, Lance Hurd's in this conversation. David Sanders is in this conversation for sure. Mike Matthews is in this conversation. Peyton Lewis is in this conversation. And all those guys have had their moments outside of David Sanders, who's a true freshman. Sure, Lance Hurd obviously did not have the season that he wanted last year. Hopefully, I mean, there's no hopefully about it. I mean, he's got to play better this year, or Tennessee's in trouble on the front line. Sounds like he's had a really, really good offseason. He's been practicing a lot, which is something that he did not do last year. But, I mean, Lance Hurd's had his moments. Mike Matthews certainly had his moments, and he's going to be leading the wide receiver room this year. Peyton Lewis, along with Deshaun Bishop and Star Thomas, look to be a pretty good running back room this year, trying to replace all that was the production of Dylan Sampson. But, I mean, those guys are on potential. They haven't necessarily arrived yet, and we'll see if they do. Underrated guys that I think could be in this conversation. Miles Kitselman. Miles Kitzman's not going to be high on anybody's draft board. Miles Kitzman's never going to be an all-SEC player. But for the importance of this team, I think Miles Kitzman is right up there. But he's severely underrated. I think Bryson East and Jackson Moy, 2 interior defensive linemen, very, very underrated because defensive tackle is not a flashy position, right? Defensive tackle is not one that's going to go grab headlines, but those 2 guys are really, really good. And the final one that I wrote down is Arian Carter. I think Arian Carter is Tennessee's best linebacker, and I still think that there is another level for him to reach. Not overrunning, not over pursuing with his angles, being better in his pass sets whenever he's getting out there to his hook curl, trying to find the number 3 wide receiver or the number 2 wide receiver, playing in space. I think Arian Carter is Tennessee's best linebacker. I think he's going to have a good year, but also I think there's another level for him to reach. So these are some of the names that came to mind for me when I thought, okay, if I'm playing backyard football right now, who's my number 1 overall pick for Tennessee on the current team? Given the circumstances, the injuries, where we are on the calendar, all that and more. And Boo Carter was number 1 on the board for me. So, is Boo Carter Tennessee's best football player right now? Right now, on May the 12th? The answer is yes. And if he is the best player come October the 12th, that's good news for Tennessee. But regardless, because of the conversation I was having with a couple of guys, we were saying, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? What about this guy? And he's like, are we talking just offense? Or are we talking just defense? Or are we talking offense and the whole team? And I'm like, based on this conversation, how we continue to talk in circles, it goes to show, it proves that Boo Carter's up here as one of those top 3 players. So Boo Carter's going to be a big role for Tennessee this year, a massive role for Tennessee this year. Maybe he'll be Tennessee's best player. But regardless, for Tennessee to reach the level, the play, the wins that it wants to be in 2025, Boo Carter's going to have to play a massive role for sure. Hey, when we come back, who are some of the Vols that benefited the most from the spring transfer portal window? Some obvious choices there and one not so obvious choice. That's coming up next, so we continue on here with your Monday morning Locked On Vols. You ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that's why Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money, you start truly building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on online shopping, food delivery, stuff like that. Now I can budget smarter and I can save so much more money. Managing money with my wife is smoother than ever as well. We can track our shared personal accounts, we can set goals, and stay on the same page without any stress. And that's all thanks to Monarch Money. Take control of your finances like I did, like we did in my household with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, 50% off your first year using the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. That's not bad. Half off your first year. One more time, promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Stop managing money. Start building wealth with Monarch Money. We're at that point in the offseason, obviously, where it's list season, it's this, it's that. I did buy or sell on Friday. We did coaching rankings, way too early, top 25s, leaving spring practice, top 25s. We're going to go over some more lists here. Don't get me wrong, here in segments 2 and 3. That's just kind of the nature of where we are on the college football calendar. But one that I've seen from various different, sites covering various different teams around the SEC and college football in general over the last couple of weeks, or really since the end of the spring transfer portal window, is, players that benefited the most from the spring window passing. And I think that's kind of interesting, right? Because number one, the obvious number one choice for me for Tennessee is David Sanders. Now, David Sanders was going to play a lot anyway, don't get me wrong. I mean, you got the investment in there, 5-star plus offensive tackle. Is he ready to go to be, holding up on the right side in the swamp, day one? Probably not. But by the time that game gets here in November, you hope that he's been battle tested. He's gone through the ringer a little bit. He's learned, he's grown, and he's ready to take on, that spot, and play better than anybody else on Tennessee's roster. And hopefully you'll get to that point way before. But the what I'm trying to say is here, he was going to start the season, he was going to play a lot, but he was also going to split some time with Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson was going to split time with David Sanders at right tackle to begin the season. At least that was the plan for right now. And again, that's no slight to David Sanders, just he's a true freshman, and it's hard to start as a true freshman in this league, much less on the offensive line. Wide receiver, defensive back, running back a little bit. Those are all places where it's easier to get on the field than at offensive tackle, in my opinion. So I think that's tough. But with Larry Johnson leaving and going to Colorado, David Sanders is your right tackle. Again, he was always going to play, but David Sanders is it. It begins and ends with David Sanders. And so I'm intrigued to see kind of what that looks like as fall camp goes along and he takes ownership of that spot. So number one for me is David Sanders has benefited the most from the spring transfer portal window, given that Larry Johnson transferred out to Colorado. Number 2 and 3 kind of go hand in hand. Number 2 is Kaleb Beasley. Number 3 is Adris Farooq. I'll start with Adris Farooq, I guess. I'll go ahead and skip to number 3 or whatever. These are interchangeable, names. Adris Farooq was a guy that the staff really, really liked as a true freshman last year. He didn't play an awful lot. He did come in and play a couple of snaps on the goal line against Georgia, which I don't really know why that's the time where you want to put a true freshman out there, but maybe somebody had a broken helmet or whatever the case was. But Adris Farooq is a guy that the staff really, really likes. His ability to come downhill, hit hard, cover in space, all that and more as a true safety. They thought that he was one of those guys in the recruiting class for 2025 that kind of soared under the radar a little bit, very underrated with his ranking. I think he was only a 3-star prospect. But he was a guy that the staff really, really liked. But, last year, Tennessee, to Willie Banks, or to Tim Banks and Willie Martinez's credit, Willie Banks, they played 4 safeties. You had Andre Turrentine, Will Brooks, you had Jacoby Thomas, and you had Christian Charles. You look around that room, and 3 of those guys are gone now. Will Brooks graduated, trying to play professional football right now. Jacoby Thomas, Christian Charles left via the transfer portal. John Slaughter, who's not in this conversation, left via the transfer portal. So now there are opportunities at the safety position. And so, as it stands right now, you got Andre Turrentine, you got Adris Farooq, and you got Kaleb Beasley, who are going to be your 3 safeties. And we'll see if another freshman can kind of step up and kind of take that 4th safety spot. And we'll see if it's a 3-man rotation, if they feel comfortable with a 4-man rotation. But 2 new safeties are going to be in that safety rotation this year. And Adris Farooq, who's kind of played that position for 2 years now, balled out in camp-like settings. They like that a lot. But Adris Farooq, who I think was going to play anyway, still benefiting from the fact that process of elimination, there's no Jacoby Thomas, there's no Christian Charles, there's no John Slaughter, and of course there's no Will Brooks. He's going to play an awful lot, so he benefits for sure. Kaleb Beasley's interesting because you look at the lack of corner depth right now as it is, or as it was before the spring transfer portal window. Okay, Colton Hood came in, and that's going to help out an awful lot. But you look at the lack of corner depth to begin things off, and you got a guy in Kaleb Beasley who came to Tennessee to be a corner, and they moved him to safety for spring practice. And it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? Jermon McCoy's injured right now. Ricky Gibson, there was some uncertainty heading into spring practice. You got Jalen McMurray. Then you got a lot of freshmen that you don't really know a whole lot about at the corner position. You go in, you address that need to get Colton Hood versatility. We've talked all about that and more, and that's great. But they moved Kaleb Beasley from corner to safety, and that move in spring practice was the right move. He's more comfortable there. He's balling out. He's making plays. Feels like it's a more natural fit at this level of football for Kaleb Beasley, whereas he was a pretty good corner at the high school ranks. But like Adris Farooq, Kaleb Beasley is going to play. And in spring, Kaleb Beasley was playing a little bit of star as well, backing up Boo Carter. But now with the addition of Colton Hood, that can free up Jalen McMurray to go and spell Boo Carter at the star position. And it allows a young player, still young player, only a sophomore, in Kaleb Beasley, to really hone in and focus on the safety position where he's going to be a part of probably a 3-man crew to begin things off. Kaleb Beasley had a good spring. Kaleb Beasley absolutely benefits from the fact that there's no Jacoby Thomas, there's no Christian Charles, there's no Will Brooks. For sure benefits from the fact of the post-spring transfer portal window. Got 2 more here that I want to talk about. Number 1, let's go to the offensive line in Jesse Perry. So Larry Johnson leaves Tennessee to go to Colorado. Okay, David Sanders is your right tackle. Who are your other tackles? Dane Davis isn't here anymore. John Campbell, of course, isn't here anymore. Bennett Warren is here, but because Bennett Warren wasn't here last spring practice, it's like he's still playing catch up, right? He got on campus, June of last summer. Fall camp was his first time in pads. He never had a chance as a true freshman, don't get me wrong, so took a red shirt, obviously. kind of starting to come into his own a little bit in spring, but I think he's still a little ways off. But Bennett Warren is an option at tackle. And then who else? Who are your other options at tackle? Well, a guy that the staff really, really likes, but just never really had a role and never really had a position was Jesse Perry, a guy that played at an option offense, won a state title, didn't do a pass set until he got to Tennessee spring of last year, but kind of took with it, ran with it, learned with it. And I remember this time last year, man, the staff was really, really high on Jesse Perry. Knew that he wasn't going to play, but really, really high on him. And then coming into fall camp and then this past spring practice, it's like, okay, well, where does he best fit? Can he snap the football? Can he factor into the center position? Okay, well, can he play a little bit of guard? I mean, he was more of an internal option at center guard over this past spring practice after coming in as a tackle last year. But with the need at offensive tackle now for some depth, and Tennessee needs a swing man, that's going to be Jesse Perry. Jesse Perry is now going to be your swing man. Jesse Perry is now going to be your Dane Davis in that role for this year. Now, will he play a ton of snaps like Dane Davis did? I don't know. I'm not saying that. But Jesse Perry absolutely benefits from the fact that they like him. They want to find a role for him, but he was kind of buried in the interior at center guard. Now there's a true need at tackle. There's a true need for some depth at offensive tackle, at right tackle, at left tackle. And Jesse Perry is going to be your swing man. So Jesse Perry absolutely benefits from the fact, again, like David Sanders, that Larry Johnson has left Tennessee for Colorado via the transfer portal. And the last one I want to highlight isn't because anybody left the room in the spring transfer portal window. It's the fact that Tennessee didn't add anybody, at least to this point, at this position via the spring transfer portal window. Tennessee has 7 scholarship wide receivers. And again, Tennessee often doesn't play 7 in the rotation. I get that. But you're a key injury or 2 away from being in trouble. You are. And that's why Tennessee needed to go out and get a body. Now, I'm not saying go out and overpay to get somebody or anything like that, but Tennessee needed some depth at wide receiver, and that is the biggest head scratcher for me that Tennessee did not address. You went and got Amari Jefferson, and that's great. It's a guy that you really, really liked out of high school, but he's coming off injury and he's never played a college snap. So, like, how much is Amari Jefferson actually going to help you this fall? I don't know. You know, that's to be determined. But my point is, Tennessee didn't add at wide receiver like it wanted to in the spring transfer portal window. Thus, Redarius Jackson, a true freshman, is truly going to benefit in that regard. Redarius Jackson, Travis Smith, really, really good freshman, young, explosive wide receiver. Smith overshadowed Jackson in the recruiting cycles. In the recruiting rankings, I thought Jackson was severely underrated. One of the better players from the state of Tennessee, West Tennessee, out in the Memphis area. Ole Miss liked him a lot. Florida liked him a lot. Several schools liked him a lot. He wanted to come to Tennessee, and he balled out in spring. He did a really, really good job. Impressed the staff, impressed his peers, impressed the current, the offensive personnel. And I think Redarius Jackson, because no matter what, I mean, he was going to have to play a little bit because they only have 7 scholarship wide receivers. But because he didn't add any to it, I mean, he's a guy that's going to spell some of these guys anyway, but also if there's an injury, he's going to be the first in line to step up and go play on the outside, along with Travis Smith, depending on what side it is. So Redarius Jackson, who had a really, really good spring, a really solid spring, benefits a lot from the fact that Tennessee did not add a wide receiver in the spring transfer portal window. So these are my 5. Let me know if I'm forgetting anybody. Oversights happen all the time with me. But David Sanders, Kaleb Beasley, Adris Farooq, Jesse Perry, and Redarius Jackson, 5 players that benefit the most from the spring transfer portal window for the Tennessee Volunteers. I'd love to hear from you guys. You can let me know part of the mailbag questions as well tomorrow. Talk to me Tuesday at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. All right. Does Tennessee have one of the bleakest quarterback rooms in all of college football? One outlet says yes. Also, the most important game, you guys know my thoughts on this, but what does CBS Sports claim is the most important game for the Tennessee Volunteers this fall? That's coming up next right here on a Monday Locked On Vols. Obviously, Tennessee had some shuffling at the quarterback position post-spring practice. Nico Iamaleava, the saga there, the drama there, renegotiating his deal. Everybody gets mad, doesn't show up for Friday morning practice, leaves, transfers. He's at UCLA. And the projected starting quarterback for the Bruins, Joey Aguilar, who transferred in from Appalachian State in December, is now coming to Tennessee. So you got a quarterback room for Tennessee that's got Joey Aguilar, that has played a ton of football at the Group of 5 level. Appalachian State, one of the program leaders in two years starting, and passing touchdowns and passing yards and all that and more, was ready to make the step up to the Power 4 level on the West Coast where he's from in the state of California. But obviously Nico Iamaleava comes in, he leaves, now he's coming to Tennessee. So tons of experience, just not the Power 4 level, but that's Joey Aguilar. Then you got Jake Merklinger, who was a 4-star rated prospect, who had a really, really good spring for Tennessee this year. Even before all the Nico drama started, it was Jake Merklinger that was showing up on tape. It was Jake Merklinger that people were talking about and all that and more. And so it was good for him to have a good spring, but he's played in 2 games, and it was mop-up duty last year as the, third-string quarterback or whatever. He was never expected to start this year, but now he's right in the middle of a quarterback battle that's going to go on throughout fall camp for sure. He is if I'm Jake Merklinger, I'm thinking in my mind I'm the leader in the clubhouse. Tennessee had to add another quarterback no matter what, simply because you only had 2 scholarship quarterbacks with Jake Merklinger and George McIntyre. So Tennessee had to add a quarterback no matter what, and Josh Heupel said as much, after the orange and white game. But if I'm Jake Merklinger, I'm sitting here saying, okay, I've got the most experience in this offense, okay? I've been here the longest. I know my teammates. I know the way my coaches thinks. I've got ability. Go out there and win the job. That's my mindset if I'm Jake Merklinger. But nonetheless, of course, he's going to be competing with George McIntyre, who I'll get to here in a moment, and Joey Aguilar, who is expected, according to Austin Price at VolQuest.com, to be getting on campus this week. But he's going to be behind the 8 ball, trying to learn the offense, trying to win over his teammates, his coaches, all that and more on the clock. So you got Joey Aguilar, you got Jake Merklinger, then you got George McIntyre. George McIntyre, who was an early enrollee this past spring, went through spring practice, had good days, had bad days, just like any true freshman would. Impressed with his mobility, his ability to extend plays and all that. Had a good orange and white game, but again, you can't take anything from the orange and white game. It was literally a glorified practice that we got to see. That's all it was. He had a good day. Okay, he had a good day. But George McIntyre is certainly in this conversation as well, but I would very much put him third in line right now. So that's Tennessee's quarterback room. You add in a couple of walk-ons who will be here for fall camp. That's Tennessee's quarterback room. Is it one of the quote-unquote bleakest quarterback rooms in college football? According to CBS Sports, it is indeed. Now, it's not one of the top 10 bleakest quarterback rooms. However, it comes into the category of not honorable mentions, but dishonorable mentions, because this is a list that you don't want to be on, according to the article. Houston is on that list. By the way, did you guys know that Connor Wagman is the quarterback at Houston? I remembered that after I read this article, but I forgot about that. Houston is in the dishonorable mentions category, and then there's Tennessee. CBS Sports says, quote, the Vols lost high upside quarterback Nico Iamaleava and replaced him with a solid, if unspectacular, starting option transfer in Joey Aguilar, formerly of UCLA and Appalachian State. Backup options Jake Merklinger and true freshman George McIntyre both rank as 4 stars out of high school, but neither is taking meaningful snaps. McIntyre especially needs to put on a lot of weight before being ready to play. End quote. That's what CBS Sports has to say about Tennessee's quarterback room. I mean, again, there's not a lot in there that you can argue. It's in the dishonorable category, whereas the top 10 looks like Virginia. Number 9 is Kentucky, Zach Calzada, a return to the SEC, heyo. Stanford. Number 7 is UCF, where Taven Jackson, former Tennessee quarterback signee once upon a time went to Indiana, now he's at UCF. Purdue's at number 6. California, Cal, is at number 5. Maryland is at number 4. Wake Forest with Robbie Ashford is at number 3. Minnesota is at number 2. And Oklahoma State is at number 1. So Tennessee didn't make the top 10 in this regard, but just on the outside looking in. And again, I think it's fair simply because it's all unproven. There's so much we don't know about the Tennessee quarterback room. We don't know how Joey Aguilar is going to compete at the Power 4 level. We've seen what he's done in Group of 5. We've seen what he's done. He's turnover prone, but man, he throws for a ton of yards. He throws a lot. He's got athletic ability. We don't know how he will translate to the Power 4 level, but more importantly, we don't know how he's going to translate into the Josh Heupel offense. Remember, again, Hendon Hooker was very, very, very average. And then he came to Tennessee, got paired with Josh Heupel, and boom. Hendon Hooker was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. Sometimes it takes a change of scenery. Sometimes it takes a change into a different offense. We'll see what it looks like. But we don't know what Joey Aguilar is going to look like. We don't know what Jake Merklinger is going to look like. He just hasn't played. George McIntyre has literally never suited up for a college game yet. There's just so much unknown, and that's why Tennessee's showing up on this list, in my opinion. So I thought that was interesting. Wanted to run it by you guys. Another CBS Sports article that I thought was interesting was going on the most important games for every top 25 team. According to CBS Sports, Tennessee's the number 20 team right now, and the most important game for Tennessee this upcoming football season is the third Saturday in October at Alabama on October the 18th. This is what CBS Sports has to say. Quote, the calculations for Tennessee's 2025, or the calculus for Tennessee's 2025 season changed a bit after the brutal spring. This saw it lose high upside quarterback Nico Iamaleava and whiff on some much needed wide receiver reinforcements in the transfer portal. Yet, the Vols still have a shot to make the CFP for the second consecutive season. In order to get there, they will need to show that they can hang in the tough games on the road, including one against Alabama, a team that's already beaten twice, both at home in the past 3 years, end quote. Obviously, on the road, third Saturday in October, at Alabama, massive game. We've talked about this ad nauseum. You guys know where I lie, though. The most important game, because I think it's going to come down to the very end when it comes to a college football playoff berth or the potential of one, is on the road in the Swamp. And we talked about this I think I talked about this with Spencer last week, Locked on College Football. The game, the second to last game of the regular season, late November at Florida, that's the most important game. But if you win this game on the road at Alabama, you provide yourself a cushion to where you can maybe lose that game at Florida. Now, it's so late in the year, recency bias, I don't necessarily like that. But you win one of those games, you can lose the other, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because say in this mind, you handle business where you're supposed to, beat Oklahoma, beat Syracuse, go on the road, handle Mississippi State, all that and more, take care of the Kentuckys of the world, the Vanderbilts. Say you drop Georgia at home early in the year, but if you win one of Alabama or Florida on the road, I think you're in a really good spot, obviously, of making the college football playoff. Easier said than done, I get all that. I'm not discrediting the game against Alabama. I just think that the most important game for Tennessee is at the end of the year, second to last game of the season at Florida on the road. But obviously the third Saturday in October is a massively important football game for Tennessee, and that's what CBS Sports thinks. Speaking of Florida, the most important game for their 10th ranked team being the Florida Gators, they say it is Tennessee on November the 22nd. Quote, Florida has tougher opponents on another gauntlet of a schedule, but the annual rivalry contest could come down with major late season CFP implications for both teams. This is also a game arguably stacked in Florida's favor, given Tennessee's tough offseason and the fact that the Vols' well-documented road struggles under Josh Heupel. So for Florida, CBS Sports says the biggest game is Tennessee. I say the biggest game for Tennessee is Florida. CBS says the biggest game for Tennessee is Oklahoma. What say you? Would love to hear from your input on the Talk to Me Tuesday, maybe the mailbag edition of the show. All that is coming up on tomorrow's show. Please send in your questions, your comments, and your concerns, and we'll get to them on tomorrow's mailbag show. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols. Thank you so much for being here. Fun show coming up. If you were picking anybody from Tennessee's football team right now to be on your football team on May the 12th, who would it be? I think it's tough not to pick Boo Carter. I really, really do. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. All that and more. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll answer your questions. We'll talk Tennessee baseball. The finality of what happened on Sunday afternoon, that rubber match, the 7th of the season, where Tennessee is in the field of 64 projections. We'll talk about a new Tennessee basketball assistant coach hire. All that and more is coming up on a Tuesday Locked On Vols. Thank you guys so much for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single morning. As always, you can find this free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Until tomorrow, have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.